Portal season for Michigan State officially kicked off as one player announced that they are going to enter next week. Also, the latest on signing day. And yeah, shooty hoops, baby. Michigan State hitting the road to take on Minnesota. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Spartans. It's your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe. Also reach out to us, lockedonspartans@gmail.com. We're going to try to get to a mailbag question or two at the end of this show. Before that, Michigan State takes on Minnesota Wednesday night, 8:30 on Big Ten Network. But hey, even before all that, yes, early signing day for football is upon us. Felt like we just watched Michigan State walk off the snowy field in a razor-thin, close game against Rutgers. But yeah, no, the offseason's already rocking and rolling here. But guys, before even any of that, it's already portal season. Next Monday is when the portal opens. But, of course, you got guys making their announcements right now, and Michigan State had their first announcement of someone defecting from the program. That would be defensive lineman Ken Talley. Now, he played in 10 games. Okay, the first 5 games, he had 96 snaps. He actually had a really productive start to the season. He had 7 pressures and 1 sack in those first 5 games. Now, the last 5 games he played in, his snap count dropped from, 96 in the first 5 games to just 56 in the last 5 games. And instead of 7 pressures and 1 sack in a 5-game stretch, he had 1 pressure in the last 5 games. So, look, there's different situations for all transfers involved right here. It could be because, they think that they could land at a better program, get a better NIL payday. Or like we talked about yesterday, MSU will be saying goodbye to some players. And in the announcement from Ken Talley that, thanks Coach Mel Tucker for bringing him on to Michigan State. No mention of Jonathan Smith. I'm going to go ahead and take a wild stab that that's not a coincidence, that maybe got a little mutual, maybe not so mutual, but perhaps mutual, who's to say, parting of ways here. So that is going to be the issue for that one. Now, of course, guys, it doesn't become official until next week. He can pull his name out of the transfer portal, but I would not bet a lot of money on that happening. He is going to be the first, guys, we talked about this yesterday, the first of a few, maybe a little more than 2 handfuls of players that we expect to enter the portal. This will be another year with some turnover, not as much as last year, like where it's going to be 30-plus players. At least that's not what we're expecting over here, and the fine people that I've talked to that know things about things. So, yeah, again, when you see a player go in the portal, don't be too shocked. Don't be too stunned. I don't think a lot of you guys will be, but yeah, that's the first one of at least a few that will be entering. Now, signing day is tomorrow. Early signing day is what they call it. I don't know why they call it early signing day. It should just be called signing day, whatever. They have the other period in February. That's your bonus signing day over there. And guys, we got to commit. Not too long ago. How about that? Evan Young, 6 foot, 100-pound defensive back out of the great football state of Texas. Plays 5A football down there. That's the second highest division you can play. His team did really well last year, 10-2. And when I'm watching his highlight film, what sticks out about Evan Young? Why is he a 3-star player? Why is he one of the better defensive backs in the country? This man can hit. He is physical. And, of course, you can say that about a lot of football players, but at the high school level, this guy does not stray away from contact. And, well, that's something that you're going to like with a defensive back player. Also, guys, we haven't talked about this yet. This happened in the middle of last week, and I apologize that we have not gotten to the Terrence Deuce Edwards commitment, or should I say flip, as he decommitted from West Virginia and joined the Michigan State Spartans. But yeah, I wanted to talk about it last Wednesday, but then we beat number 12 North Carolina in basketball, so that was that whole show. And then I was going to talk about it after the Rutgers game, but that got so out of hand that we couldn't talk about recruiting right there. So here we are, Terrence Edwards, cousin of one of my favorite players of all time, Felton Davis. So surely that had something to do with his commitment, right? But no, he committed to Coach Meat Blue Adams, obviously Coach Meat, well, he just went to UCLA. However, Terrence Edwards said that he is going to be locked in with Michigan State. No drama there of him following Coach Meat to UCLA. He's in with the Spartans. So there's 2 recent defensive back commits right there. Also joining George Mullins. He's the cornerback right out of Florida, plays in one of the lowest, if not the lowest division down there. I like to think that he's one of these diamond in the rough finds. Not really in a football. Okay, so the state of Florida is a football hotbed. Where George Mullins is from, not really in one of those hot areas where you're going to see a lot of camps, a lot of big-name schools. So, look, low-rated 3-star, of course. All these guys aren't going to work out, but I am interested in George Mullins' game. I think he anticipates the ball really well as a high school player. Now, unfortunately, we talked about this yesterday. We said that Leroy Zamorano will be decommitting and flipping from Michigan State to UCLA. 20 minutes after that recording, well, what do you know? He actually did decommit. Has not flipped to UCLA yet. He's between UCLA, USC, and Washington. I would expect it's going to be with Coach Meat and the UCLA Bruins, but we'll see. It's not going to be a team that plays in East Lansing. It's going to be somewhere out west. And speaking of west, well, where's the drama this signing day going to come from for Michigan State? We're not really waiting on a ton of big flips, but this could be a flip going the other way here. Aydan West. Again, I feel like we're talking about nothing but the secondary right now. Defensive secondary player out of Maryland. He did have a Virginia Tech visit not too long ago, an Ohio State visit not too long ago. I do wonder if UCLA is going to be heavily in the mix here because he got a UCLA offer 6 days ago, which my alarm bells are kind of going off right here. And that's not to say coaches can't negotiate things before season ends, because that's just clearly the reality here. I'm not saying that Coach Meat did this, but wow, I don't think UCLA is offering a lot of kids from Maryland 6 days before signing day. And then, 4 days after that offer, hey, who did they just hire? Oh, Coach Meat, a guy that recruited and really liked Aydan West. So Virginia Tech's in the mix. Ohio State could possibly be in the mix. Michigan State, they are working to keep him here. But then also, hey, he hasn't visited UCLA. Do you need to visit a school like that, though? You know what it's all about. You're going to get great weather. As long as the coach that you really like is there, and that's Coach Meat, that opens door number 4 to possibilities. Not saying it's a 0% chance that Aydan West won't be signing here. I'm just here to say that I would be a little surprised if they beat out not just Ohio State, not just Virginia Tech, who a lot of his former teammates and friends play with right now, or even, of course, UCLA, a coach that he really likes. And convenient timing for that offer. Whatever. Anyway, more on Coach Meat here. Now, Greg wrote in lockedonspartans@gmail.com. We started the show yesterday with Coach Meat. Like, how do you lose this guy? How does he go to UCLA, leaves his alma mater, goes to, not another powerhouse? It's not like he left for Georgia or Texas or some sleeping giant like that. I left for UCLA. Now, Greg did write in, I think you were a bit hasty and unfair in your characterization of Martin's departure, as the Free Press reported. Now, he sent me a few paragraphs from the Free Press story. Now, in those paragraphs, he said, you know what, Coach Meat, he's from Pasadena. Okay, he's had coaching jobs out west, and that's stuff that we all knew. Grew up in the West Coast, has coached at many programs in the Western time zone. Here's what I did not know, though, at the time of recording. So I apologize for this. My research was a little short here. I didn't know that his whole family was still over there. I just assumed that, A, if he had family, or that he would just move them to Lansing. I didn't know that, A, he had a family and kids and all that in general. B, that they were all still on the west side. So, yes, leaving 1 year after a 2-year contract to go back to the west side makes sense. And I did not know this either. This was another fun fact pointed out by the Free Press. Coach Meat has said that he hasn't been to MSU in the last 30 years since his playing days. Like, not even for a visit is what they reported. So this guy's a West Coast man through and through. Those palm trees and 65-degree fall days and winter days were calling, I guess. So I understand now why he's back. That's truly where his roots are. What I won't take back, though, is that doesn't change how tough of a loss it is for Michigan State, of course. Like, this guy was a really good coach, really good recruiter. You saw Zamorano just decommit. We might see Aydan West decommit. And it even goes far beyond the commits, guys. Like, I would keep your eye on Chuck Brantley. A guy that, of course, is no stranger to the transfer portal. He's only been in there about 5 times in his career, but he's also just had the best year by far in his career under Coach Meat. Does he follow him out west? I'm sure Coach Meat would be very open to that, and I'm sure Chuck Brantley, who's shown that, maybe he's not really sold on staying around East Lansing. Maybe he will go out there. So, yes, I get it more from the Coach Meat side of things. Does not take away that's still a tough blow. A, just in your assistant coach's room, and B, 2 days before signing day. That's tough. Also, really quick, and some good news. Charles White, DJ White, linebacker out of Orchard Lake St. Mary's. He got his 4th star on 24/7 Sports. He is now a top 40 linebacker prospect. And guys, that might not be the end of the linebacker class with just Charles White and Damari Malone of Macomb, Dakota. That could be a nice little surprise here tomorrow, so stay tuned to that one. Guys, we will be back here in a hot second talking basketball, but first need to talk your ears off about Bettor Together. Now, guys, daily fantasy sports, yeah, it's fun, it's cool, but it's a lot of fun when you play with teammates, partners. Do you hate the team that you drafted for the season-long fantasy grind, but you still want to stay in the action with daily fantasy? We'll do it with Bettor Together. Bettor Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the daily fantasy movement at Bettor Together. Download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to play in a contest with or even, hey, maybe against me. Who's to say? Again, guys, download Bettor Together now from the App Store. Sign up using promo code LOCKEDON because winning alone is fun, but it's Bettor Together. Basketball time. That's right. Hey, you know what? Vibes are high right now with Michigan State hoops. Kind of seems like a different chapter in the Tom Izzo era. The team had a really nice 2-1 stretch in Maui, clobbered Colorado, lost to a pretty good Memphis team, and then in almost heart-shattering fashion lost to North Carolina. But no, in an adrenaline-boosting way, they beat them. We all know that. But look, guys, that still wasn't enough for the AP poll to rank our Michigan State Spartans in the top 25, which, honestly, fine. I like that. I like that this team will still have a chip on their shoulder. That's what Tom Izzo teams do best, play well. When everyone's sleeping on them, they got to have something to play for, something to prove to someone. Like, I actually don't care that they are not in the top 25. They're actually just one team away. They're 26th if you added up all the votes. Even though they have, 2 losses to top 15 teams. Anyway, I'm not going to lament on it. What I do care about is laziness, stupidity, or the combination of both shown by the AP poll right there. UConn lost 3 times in Maui. We all know this. Everyone has to know this, right? Well, everyone except the fine folks at the AP poll, they still ranked a 3-loss Husky team 25th. All right, they are 5-3 on the season. They have no wins against anyone in the top 290 ranked teams on BartTorvik.com. That's really bad. And, if only there was a common opponent between, UConn and Michigan State. Oh, wait a minute, that's right. UConn played Colorado a day after Michigan State walloped them. Oh, well, whatever. You know what? It even just goes beyond UConn. Also, UNC. They're ranked 20th. They are ranked 20th after going 1-2 in Maui. And gee, by golly, if there's only a court where MSU and North Carolina could have played each other. It's just black and white, clear as day. So, people, you can't be taken seriously the rest of the year, if not just infinitely, or indefinitely, I should say. Because that is top tier laziness right there. That's only a few examples of what was wrong with that poll. There's 6 voters that had Arkansas ranked over Illinois, even though they lost by like 13 points against them last week. Shout out to the AP poll voters that just took the week off. Don't let basketball get in the way of your Thanksgiving plans. Let's just start. Anyway, guys, 8:30, Big Ten Network opening up Big Ten play against Minnesota. The 6-3 Gophers. They have losses to North Texas, Wichita State, Wake Forest. Their wins have also been a little, not too convincing. They have a 4-point win over Omaha. That's right, Frankie Fiddler's old team. A 3-point win over Yale, and then a 3-point win over Central Michigan, which, by the way, you still owe us $1.75 million with interest, Central Michigan, if you're listening to this, Amy Folland. Anyway, it's not all bad for Minnesota. What are they strong at? What's going to get us a little worried about tomorrow's game? It's that defense is really good, guys. They haven't faced a murderer's row of teams yet, but they also haven't let a single opponent score over 65 in regulation yet this season. All right, they're 51st in the country at defensive efficiency, and by God, how on earth does Dawson Garcia still have eligibility to play college basketball? He averages 19 points, 7 rebounds right now. Hey, we've always known he could step out and shoot the three-pointer, this 6'11" stretch player. He's shooting the rock at 41% from behind the arc this year. Of course, also a strong rebounder, so you got to watch out for Dawson Garcia. That's going to be most of the game right there. Can you limit the damage he can do? You're not going to stop him. They did a really good job of limiting the damage last year, held him to 10 points in a matchup last year. I believe that was the one at Minnesota. Still didn't matter because he lost that game anyway. But you know what? Still kept him in check in the Big Ten tournament too. Can you have a repeat of that performance? Because outside of Dawson Garcia, there's not a ton to rely on offensively. Of course, defense, it's not a problem there for Minnesota. But outside of him, Parker Fox, 6'8", 220 pound. He's strong in the post. But guys, I also got to point this out too. I couldn't believe this when I read it. Parker Fox started his college career in 2017. 2007. What were you doing in your life in 2017? There are some upperclassmen at Michigan State that were just starting high school. Back in 2017. You could be a junior at Michigan State right now, maybe even a senior. I should have done the math before this, but there are people that were freshmen when this guy was a freshman in college. Anyway, look out for Parker Fox. He might bring his 3 kids and his second wife there. I don't know, but that's unbelievable that you could start. He started at Northern State, smaller college, and he's had a ton of injuries. This is how he's gotten so much eligibility, but yeah, that's just a big presence in the post that I guess is notable. There's another notable player right now. It's Mike Mitchell, really strong guard for the Minnesota Gophers. Okay, now this is what Coach Ben Johnson had to say about Mike Mitchell. He left 2 games into the season, really bad sprained ankle. It's iffy if he will play tomorrow. It's a long quote from Ben Johnson, but I want to read it all to you whether Mike Mitchell will play. Quote, "We'll see today." He said that on Tuesday, the day before the game. He didn't do anything yesterday, so we'll see what it looks like today. You're also looking at, with our schedule, you're looking at a big break coming up too, so you want to be smart. My biggest thing, when Mike is back, we want him to be back for the long haul. You don't want it to be something where you can force it back, and then all of a sudden with a severe high ankle sprain, which he had, you tweak it a little bit, and then you're 2 to 3 weeks behind. So we'll look at it today and see what it looks like, but we're also going to be very smart with that. Now, a normal person, a normal fan would read and listen to that quote and say, there's probably no shot that he's going to play against Michigan State. Just like he said, there's a long break after a high ankle sprain, especially with how important of a player as he is. You don't want to rush that back. But us State fans that watched that Seton Hall game, and what year was it, 2019, where Kevin Willard almost on camera said that we are euthanizing Miles Powell tomorrow at noon. Be there with the cameras rolling so you can see it. And then next thing you know, Miles Powell's going off for 30 against Michigan State in a near win over the Spartans. I don't trust any coach anymore. Kevin Willard, with his shenanigans, what he did before that Seton Hall game, has done irreversible trust issue damage on my brain and a lot of other Michigan State Spartan fans' brain right now. So, yes, outside of Dawson Garcia, if Mitchell plays, that's going to be tough. But what can keep Minnesota a live dog in this game? It is that defense, guys. And that's why Bart Torvik right now expects a 63-61 win for Michigan State. It looks like Michigan State's a better team. The computers over at Bart Torvik projecting just a 2-point win. FanDuel Sportsbook, their line just came out right before recording. 4.5-point favorites. Michigan State is on the road. Not going to tell you which way to pick in this game, and just because of the voodoo of the barn. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. I'm just going to stay away from betting on that game, even though I think Michigan State's going to win. I will never bet Spartans at Minnesota, no matter how good or bad Michigan State is, no matter how good or bad Minnesota is. That's just a good rule of thumb I have in life. And speaking of betting, well, hey, if you're confident, FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, guys. Now, get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now back to a little more basketball talk with Michigan State against Minnesota. What is Minnesota not strong at? Okay, well, we've said, the offense, they've only had 70 points or more twice this season. They're shooting just 29.3% from three. Now, it's still better than Michigan State, but that is 287th in the nation. They don't shoot the three-point that well, and it's also matched on the free throw line, too. 61.4% is how well Minnesota shoots free throws as a team. That is 346th in the nation. Parker Fox, one of the big men we talked about, and then there's another big man, Trey Edmonds. They both are shooting below 50% right now. I know big men do not shoot free throws well. And I know these guys probably aren't great shooters, but it's really hard to stay below 50%. So is this the game where Parker Fox and Trey Edmonds, below 50% free throw shooters, finally start seeing water find its level, and then they combined have a night where they go like 12 of 14 from the line? Stay tuned. That's the kind of barn magic you can expect when you play at Minnesota. Also, really quick, I did want to point this out. Minnesota is 362nd in the nation in adjusted tempo. I made sure I looked up the tempo stat because we have a point guard, Jeremy Fears, who I love, who I think is going to be a star here. Overall, still a really strong start to the season for him. The one problem that Jeremy Fears has, though, and it's a big one for a point guard, he really can't play against high tempo or a press. Saw that against Samford. Really out of sorts for that one. Saw it in spades in the last 2 minutes against North Carolina last week. My man gets frenzied against a press. So to see that Minnesota plays a little bit slower, we welcome that. And if Mike Mitchell's out too, that's all the better. Okay, I just had to point that out. Now, what to watch for? It's pretty easy. The front court, how are you going to defend Dawson Garcia? I think that they'll throw a lot of bodies on him, a lot of different looks, of course. Your Carson Coopers of the world. I'm sure Zapala will start, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Frankie Fiddler body him up. More athletic guy like Cohen Carr for a little bit. It's going to be a lot of taste of different medicine for Dawson Garcia, I would imagine. The backcourt, look, Jace is a full go. That was announced not too long ago. Jace Richardson missed that last game against North Carolina. But I'm also curious to see how Trey Holloman's going to play. Kind of a slow start to the season for Trey, but exploded on the scene against North Carolina. I think it is a good storyline that he is going back home to Minnesota, where last year he did not have a strong game at. I think he played 22 minutes, 4 points, 2 or 3 shooting, just a quiet, timid game from him. Want to see him be a little more assertive, not just for the hometown aspect, not just to, show up in your home state, but also just for the season too. You showed us something against North Carolina. Let's see if we can keep on turning those wheels. And that leads me to what I'm most interested in for this game. It's Frankie Fiddler. Because in the second half of the Memphis game, he did not have a good box score against Memphis. But, man, he was going for it. He was still trying to find his game, find the way that he played at Omaha, trying to be physical in the post, be that 3-level scorer. Kind of saw things materialize against Memphis, and then bang against North Carolina. Look, you can't expect him to go 5 of 6 from the floor every night, but he looked markedly more comfortable there. So maybe it's just been a slow burn to get acclimated with group of 6 basketball. I want to see if it's still going to happen here against pretty good physically imposing guys, like the guys who we've already mentioned. Parker Fox, let's see if he's going to be assigned to Frankie Fiddler, a 4 against a 4. So we'll see. Stay tuned to that one. We're going to dive into the mailbag here. Steve writes in. Now, this goes back to the football game on Saturday. He says, I see that the Free Press is blasting Spartans for a lackluster turnout by the fans. I can imagine that you also might. Problem is that it is very difficult to fill Spartan Stadium on Thanksgiving weekend Saturday, mainly because the students are still out. He also goes on to say that he attended during the Perlis era, that most students didn't return until Sunday. And also, just with TV coverage, you're going to see a lot more empty seats, of course. Now, I'm going to go back to the comment of, I can imagine that you also might. Well, no, Steve. I'm not going to blast anyone here for not showing up to that game. All right? No. If you did show up to that game, you are an incredible fan. That means that you are a sensational fan. If you missed that game, though, that doesn't mean that you're not, though. Okay? Like, Michigan State, it's not like they've gone the whole season without filling that stadium. Even that Purdue game, Friday night, not a great Michigan State team against an even worse Purdue team with even somehow worse weather, depending on how well you could stomach cold weather. I can't do it that well, but you get my point. Not a sexy matchup on Friday night. That was still a well-attended game, considering all things. So, look, leaving that Purdue game, I remember that atmosphere. That was not jovial at all. That didn't seem like, I don't know, what do you want to call it, 50,000 people that were leaving, not waiting to get back to see that anemic offense 8 days later. After that game happened, I think it was, okay, time to box up the season and send it out to sea, light it on fire. So, no, I'm not going to blast anyone that, bowl game or not bowl game on the line, that didn't want to see that team that turns out, like Aydan said after the game, well, that has some players that kind of just quit during the game, too. So, no, you want fans to show up? We're going to need to see a team show up for a full 60 minutes. I don't think that's asking a lot here. So, the other interesting thing, too, about this weekend game, or like the Thanksgiving weekend game, is like it's not even specific to this season. It's not just because Michigan State isn't doing well, but I remember in 2017, miserable weather for that game. 8-3 Michigan State going up against Maryland. Senior day, of course. It had to have been 25 degrees, 30-mile-an-hour winds and snow. It was miserable. No one showed up for that game. I actually went back and I looked what the announced attendance was for that game, and I laughed out loud. In an empty room, no one else around. I laughed out loud at my laptop when I saw that 70,216 people were announced for that game back in 2017. Guys, there weren't even 216 people in the stadium, especially at the end of that game. So, no, it's not just because Michigan State's bad. That's certainly a reason people were fed up a little bit with this season, but even in good seasons, that's a tough sell. Guys, I remember the 2015 game. Someone can fact check me on this. I've tried to look around the internet to see if I could verify this, but I do remember that I think student section tickets, like it was a bring a friend deal. Like you could bring one friend for free to try to fill that stadium. I think outside the student section, it was pretty full because that was the college football playoff year, but the student section still needed a lot of help to be filled even for that game. It's just not a convenient game, of course. So that's what it is. And that's also, guys, a big reason why I didn't mind the Ford Field game last year. I know that you guys are sick of me talking about this. Even the ones that are on my side are probably still sick of me beating this drum, but that's why I didn't mind the Ford Field games Thanksgiving weekend. It's a lot easier to pull from where a lot of your alumni are in the Detroit area for a climate-controlled game, and they did show out for it. That was a sold-out Ford Field, even though everyone knew that MSU, who wasn't even playing for a bowl game, was going to get fed straight into a wood chipper that night. It was still a sold-out game, so I'm not saying that you do it at Ford Field every single year. I don't want to completely tear the fabric of tradition, but like once every Olympic cycle, once every election cycle, once every 4 years might not hurt. I don't know. If attendance is going to be that big of an issue, well, there's your solution right there. You saw it work out in spades last year, and you saw how it worked this year. So, no, Steve, I'm not going to call people out. I thought it was a little strange the Free Press pointed it out, but you got to have something to write about it, and that's not a dig at the Free Press. Like, truly, what else can you write about this team? Like this, they were the same version of themselves for the last 5 weeks of the year. So I don't know. we'll put a close to that dialogue about fan participation. I can't knock Spartan fans for not showing up. And that's where we're gonna leave things right there. Hey, show up tomorrow though. Locked on Spartans, we're going to talk about signing day. We're going to talk about the strength of this class, the linebackers, strong defensive line commit too with Derek Simmons out of Frankenmuth as well. And then, yes, we are going to talk about this Michigan State-Minnesota basketball game. Got a nice guest that we haven't talked to in a while lined up. Cannot wait to chat with him. So don't want to say the name, don't want to jinx anything, but guys, stay tuned for that tomorrow night. All right, until then, guys, take care of yourselves. Love you all. Go Green.